In this video, we're going to take a look at activity 3.1.2 basic outputs programming for the VEX Cortex. And with this, we're going to totally take a look in this video at part 1 called controlling LEDs. So with this is going to be start off with having us launch RobotC. And one of the things before we get started, we need to verify under robot that our platform type is set to VEX 2.0 Cortex and natural language PLTW to make sure that we get the right file settings. So this will be a step that we'll cover in each video because it's very common for RobotC to switch back to the IQ platform sometimes after many closes and restarts with your devices. So with that, I'm going to go to File, Open Sample Program, and here, if you're on the VEX 2 folder, you'll want the PLTW folder and the PLTW template, and select Open. With this, now that we are actually going to do some programming, so in the last video we just covered inputs and outputs, so now let's go ahead and take a look at filling in some of the information that we would see in the template. So here up at the top, you're going to notice that we've got a slash with an asterisk. This is a start of a multi-line comment. So up here at the top, I went ahead and put in project title, and I'm able to type in, and all your text will be in green. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in my name, and if you are a student, then you'll want to put in your names. And today we'll go ahead and we'll put in the date. Section, usually for like my classes, I put what class period it is or anything like that. So for example, we have a class period called Blue 3, which is one of our courses that are offered based upon our school colors. So here you could put first period, second period, whatever class section that you're in. Then you have a task description. So the task description is usually something that is a little bit more, kind of provides like what is it that exactly is going to be happening. So when I take a look at activity 3.1.2 with basic outputs programming with part 1, again they are reminding us we need to do a motor and sensor setup, which we'll do here in a moment, but they're going to give us a program to work from. So here right now, what I would say for this task description is that we are going to, based upon what's going on, is we're going to be blinking an LED. So I'll go ahead and just put blinking an LED. And in the pseudocode, we are going to first, pseudocode is usually something when we have a task description, we start developing what are the actions we're going to create with pseudocode to be able to go forward. So right now, we don't really know what exactly is happening because they're giving us the code. We're going to kind of almost take like a step backwards in doing that. But here's what's going to happen is in this code, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight it, making sure that I've got all of it here. And I want to copy. And when I go back into RobotC, it says I want to insert between the curly braces. So I'm going to go ahead, notice the line numbers over here on the left side. On line 18, it doesn't necessarily have to be line 18, but I like it because it's right underneath the curly brace. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste this in. And then usually what I like to do is get rid of some of the white spaces, so that way it's a little bit more condensed. So right now you're going to notice that here's what we have going on, is that we've got some commands. And the commands that we have are turn LED off, await, and then we have a value that's set in there in red. So a lot of times the red indicates like a variable that can be changed. The blue is a command that has been provided in natural language to make the writing of the program just a little bit easier and a little bit more condensed. And then you're going to notice right now this green is set in black text. So anything that's in black text means if I were to go up here and hit compile program, it says that we can't generate the code. And what it is if it's in black text, if you look down here in your debugger window, or your compiler errors, I should say, which is also where when you download, the debugger window will show up, is that you got an undefined variable green and that there's a short assumed. This is a very common issue sometimes when we forget to do the motor and sensor setup. So I purposely did this so that way I could show you why we need to make sure we do the motor and sensor setup. Anytime you see this short assumed, whenever they talk about variables, I always go over when my students call me over and say it's not working. I say make sure you do your motor and sensor setup. So we'll go up here, motor and sensor setup, choose the PoE sim test bed, say OK. Now when I hit compile, now you'll notice that the green text, the word green in the text, instead of being black, will turn to red. And now I don't have any errors, and now I can go ahead and run my program. So I'm going to go ahead and hit download to robot to see what my program does. So here my green LED is on digital 12, and what I can do here is I can have my debugger windows, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit the start button. And I'm going to be able to see, here's it turning on, here's it turning off, flashing for 1 second. And once it does that, you'll notice that when I hit start, the debugger window will say it will have a stop in there if it's still running the program, or it'll go through and hit start. Now, one of the things I like to do as well is under view, I like to choose under preferences, make sure that you have highlight program execution turned on. So right now this is a pretty simple program and it moves through the code pretty fast, but later this will become a very helpful setting to have turned on. So as we move forward, that's really all that they want us to do with part one, is they want us to just kind of see how the code is developed, and then how do we go through, and then they want us to document with pseudocode and comments. So this is the one thing that you'll want to do is with pseudocode, we want to say, all right, what would the pseudocode would have looked like? So maybe we want to go through and put some very basic commands so that go in there. So under the pseudocode, I'm going to say like turn green LED on, wait 1 second. Or actually we want it to turn off at first. We want it to start in the off position, hit enter. And then we want it to turn green LED on and then wait 1 second. And here's the thing, is as you type, you'll notice that you get these little blue drop-down menus. So that's why I went through and had to go up here and change my second. So either I can click off of it, or a lot of times as I'm typing, what it is it's like an autofill feature so that RobotC has. So if I don't want that, I'm just going to type second and I press the space bar, and then that way it'll get off of the autofill. So a lot of times it's very helpful, and I'll show you here in another video where I use it quite extensively, but for right now, sometimes it can be one of those things that's like, no, I really don't want that suggestion, so I just hit the space bar to do that. So you'll see we do that for, and what we're doing is we're describing what are the actions that's going on. So you'll notice that we do that 2 more times. Now here's one thing I usually get in the habit of showing students. I'm going to highlight this all and copy it, hit Control-C or Command-C, and hit Control-V, and this will then go through and say, all right, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn the LED off, wait a second, turn it on, wait a second, turn it off, wait a second, and then we're going to add one more. We're going to turn the LED off in the last one. So I'm just going to grab that first line, hit Control-C, Control-V, and then there's going to be what we have. So we get in a pretty good habit of copying and pasting what we have kind of going on. So now, as we go forward, they also want us to document in line-by-line comments. So usually the process that we have is if we have a task description that's given to us of some complex behaviors, we're going to break this down into pseudocode like this, and then we would copy and paste this into our text. Now, it doesn't really work out so well, so I'm going to show you how to do this line by line. Usually I like to tab over just a little bit, and then like maybe a few times. Doesn't really matter. There's not necessarily a set amount of times, but I like to give enough kind of verification. But what we're going to do is we're going to put in line by line comments to then double check, do the comments match our pseudocode? You know, are the behaviors that we're getting actually match the pseudocode that was written? So if I type / twice, you'll notice that here this is a line comment. So I can go through and say, for example, and what I usually do is I can kind of copy this and put it down here. Move down to the next line. I like to kind of go through and have, or I can start typing this too. Sometimes it's a little easier for me to type it and a little bit faster. So I just kind of go down through and I just verify, is like, all right, well, does this match the pseudocode? that I have. But also, this is part of documenting a program. So one of the things about that I always kind of share with students, sometimes especially in this basic programming, so they feel like they're kind of, doing busy work. And it's not really that we're doing busy work, is that we want to go through and make sure that what we're doing is documentation, because not all the time will it be that we're all the time writing a program on our own. We're working with a lot of teams, and we've got to go through and to be able to show how we document it. And then even here on the last curly brace, I like this, we'll go ahead and say program ends. So, and even up here, I can go ahead and backspace this, so that way it kind of lines up. So I like to go through and kind of make everything kind of nice and neat. I guess it's just kind of the OCD nature that I have. But this is kind of what we have going on. So here's the thing, is what would happen if they didn't give us a code. We would write our pseudocode, we would copy this, we would paste this down here, toggle it all to a comment, and then we would go ahead and start writing our commands next to each comment, making sure that we're kind of doing that. A little bit different because we're trying to see how the code is written, but this would fully document and complete activity 312 part 1 for controlling an LED.